You may be tempted by one of these if you're in the market for a used SUV, but I implore you, don't do it. Land Rover fanboys and girls are going to hate this video, but that's okay. Leave your comments down below, and if they're mean enough, I'll curl up in the fetal position and in all seriousness, I've been driving this Range Rover almost daily for over a year now, and I can say with some authority that you probably shouldn't buy one of these unless you fall into one of two categories of people, which I'll talk about later. As I film this, it is now August of 2024, and over the next year in this video, I'll be bringing you with me as I deal with the issues that will inevitably arise with this Range Rover. I already have 4 good reasons why you should not buy one of these, and they are as follows. Number 1, it's unreliable. Number 2, it has serious design flaws. Number 3, parts are expensive and sometimes can be hard to get. And number 4, they can be very labor intensive to work on. But before I trash this car too much, there are some good reasons why you might want one of these. And first and foremost, just look at it. It's beautiful. It also has a very nice interior. It's capable off-road, it's comfortable, and while it's no sports car, it is fairly nice to drive. And if we took a look at the dashboard, I just hit 180,000 miles and it's sort of lit up like a Christmas tree. So the brake light is on, the airbag light is on, and most prominently, the coolant level is low. The low coolant level is something that's been happening a lot, and I am going to deal with that. The brake light is on, I believe, because the parking brake control module may have failed, and then the airbag light is on because it can't communicate with the parking brake control module, because that makes sense. Also, the gas gauge is inaccurate when it gets below half a tank, which actually caused me to run out of gas once, and then I had to walk to the gas station. So now I'm afraid to go below half a tank because I don't want to go through that again. And there's one more mechanical issue, which I'll show you guys once I get this thing up on the lift. See this beautiful brake disc backing plate here, made out of aluminum, but being held in place by zip ties? This corroded at the steel fasteners, which seems to be a common theme for Land Rovers. Anyway, it was rubbing up against the brake rotor, making a horrible noise as I was driving, and so I've got to replace it. Okay, to track down this coolant leak, I have this cooling system pressure tester kit, and it says that the Land Rover adapter is number 6 here. And I'm going to need this hand pump. I'll screw the adapter onto the coolant reservoir, attach the hand pump quick disconnect, and now I pump it up to between 10 and 15 psi. That's about 10 psi right there. I can already see a leak. Looks like that pulley has been rubbing against that hose there until it sprung a leak, and now it's leaking coolant all over the place. That was super easy to find though. So you might think a hose like that would be easy and cheap to replace, but let's not forget this is a Range Rover. It looks like it runs underneath the intake manifold there, and then also of note, this fuel line here looks like it has to come off too. Okay, parts have come in. I got a new coolant hose, and then I also picked up some intake manifold gaskets because the intake manifold has to come off, and it's a good idea to have these. Altogether, this was $105 in parts. I get the intake manifold off, although it's slightly constrained by a wiring harness and the hose in question, which is this one right here. So it goes all the way back here, and then we've got a little hose clamp back there. That should be easy. And then at the front there, where the leak is, we've got a crimp type hose clamp, and it is a little tricky to access. Cool. Pop this on here. Okay, so this hose came through here. Get that onto the crossover pipe. Oh yeah, that's beautiful. Fits in nicely. Hopefully this is the last time I have to add coolant to this for quite a while. Of course, I got to start this up and make sure it runs with no leaks because this is my daily driver right now. Looking good. By the way, the reason it cranked for a little bit and didn't quite start right away is because I had the high pressure fuel system open, and so there was air in the system, and it took a second or two for that to bleed out. One of the downsides of a Range Rover is that because the windshield has such a steep angle, it tends to get a lot of rock chips, and this Range Rover's windshield has a lot of rock chips. It's at the point where it's very difficult to see when driving into the sun. I've decided to pony up and get the windshield replaced, partly because I have a cross-country road trip coming up and it would be nice to be able to see where I'm going. The cost of a new Range Rover windshield? $1,200 out of my own pocket. The new windshield has a solar coating to help keep the car cool in sunny conditions. From the outside it has a blue look to it, and from the inside you can feel a substantial reduction in infrared radiation from the sun. Well, it is November right now, and I have not had a chance to work on this Range Rover very much because I've been so busy with other projects, but I am leaving right now to bring this on a cross-country road trip, and hopefully it doesn't break down. Really, my biggest concern is that the fuel gauge is inaccurate when it gets below half a tank, which it is now, so I hope I don't run out of fuel. Well, Aspen and I have made it to New Mexico, and we are exploring some slot canyons here. Look at how beautiful this is. We've only had one mechanical issue so far, and it is a minor one. The brakes are juddering quite severely when I stop. I mean, they still work, but I think the brake rotors are probably warped. These slot canyons are so cool. A cross-country road trip in an old Range Rover is a comfortable and luxurious experience, while at the same time being exhilarating because you never know when or if you're going to break down. I ended up making it back to snowy New Hampshire without any issues, but about a week after arriving home... Well, I am out away from home, and unfortunately the car stalled. And now it won't restart. Actually, just before this, it did start back up, but just for a second, and then it stalled again. And so I'm thinking this is probably a fuel issue. Probably the low-pressure fuel pump would be my guess, which is probably located in the tank. So as for my next steps, looks like I'm going to be walking home. It's about 4 miles, and at least it's a nice day out there, although it is a bit cold. Well, I got my truck and trailer over here to tow it home. All loaded up, so let's go. Life of a Range Rover owner on the back of a flatbed trailer. It is now May of 2025, quite a few months later, and I am finally getting around to working on this Range Rover. And this is kind of realistic for Range Rover ownership because when you have one of these, they're so unreliable that you have to have a second vehicle. And when you have a second vehicle and it breaks down and you're sort of busy with other stuff, it's gonna sit for a while you get around to fixing it. And we got some parts here. So here we have the new fuel pump with a level sender for that side of the tank. I have this unit here, which is a level sender for the other side of the tank. And then over here, we have a fuel filter, which might have been the root cause of the issue. And because I'm replacing the level sensors for both sides of the tank, I'm hoping we're gonna kill two birds with one stone here and fix the fuel gauge issue. And because the car has been sitting for so long, the air suspension has collapsed onto the bump stops, which is not unexpected. And when I drive this car regularly, you don't notice any leaking from the air suspension, but when it does sit for a long time, this is what happens. It's been a little while since I've done this, but the rear seats fold forward, and then underneath the carpet there is access to the tank. Hold this up with zip ties. It was either going to be zip ties or bungee cords, and I have more zip ties. Okay, good. Well, there's been a chipmunk or something living in here. That's better. Oh, ooh. Oh wow, fuel just squirted all over the place and almost got in my eyes. Oh damn, look at that. Look in this connector. There's one terminal that looks like it has melted plastic around it. That suggests that might be getting pretty hot. Now I'm sure Land Rover has like an $800 special tool to remove this, but a screwdriver and a hammer work just fine. Okay, that's the fuel filter. Yeah, that looks a little melted too. This could be getting warm. It could be that the fuel filter was clogged and the fuel pump had to work extra hard, and then the fuel pump may have gotten burned out as well. So here's a look inside the tank. This is the side with just a level sensor. And then here on the other side, you can see the fuel pump all the way down there. So here's the new level sensor, and apparently to get it out, I have to pull this down, which unlocks it, and then I can sort of pull it towards me to get it out of the tank. And then the fuel pump has something sort of similar. This thing has to come down in order to unlock it. That was very easy to get it out. Look at that. And now here on the other side, it's a little harder to do. Come on. Got it. Fuel pump out. New sender going in. Okay, there it is. That's not going anywhere. Oh, there we go. 35 Newton meters. Well, that was a fairly easy repair. The total cost for all three parts was $552. And before I put this back together, let's make sure it actually runs. Oh, that does not sound great. Okay. Well, it runs. I can hear the air compressor running. That's the air compressor right there. You can hear it running, which is good. You can see the air lines coming out of it there. Well, there she is, running great. The suspension is back up to normal height. She is a bit dirty and needs a bath, but I am excited to start driving this thing again. Do you hear that noise? I just drove it out back. That sounds like that is a bad air spring. So I lowered this down to access height in order to wash it, and that's when I noticed the hissing sound. And you can see that this front wheel, the suspension is quite a bit lower than it is on the back. So I guess let's go find out how much it costs to replace the two front air struts on a Range Rover. I got two nice new air struts here. These are R0, which is supposed to be a high quality aftermarket brand. These came to $939 for the pair. So I need to use my scan tool here to deflate the suspension. So this is probably it. Let's deflate these springs. Turn on the hazard lamps? No. Turn on the ignition. Yep, it's on. Okay. I hear it doing stuff. Okay, so in full transparency, I already did the other side of the car off camera, and this is something I sometimes do in the hopes that when I do the second side on camera, it goes more smoothly, and it was an absolute nightmare. I'm trying to figure out a way to describe this without swearing, but it took way longer than expected, it was way harder than expected, and I ended up using way more parts than expected. And with the wheel off, the first thing you notice is that the brake pads are toast. Look at that pad thickness. There's like nothing there. I replaced both the pads and the rotor 20,000 miles ago, and that's all they lasted. And I guess we'll do a little bit of naming and shaming. You can sort of see there, it says Brembo on the brake pads, and the rotors were Brembo as well. I don't think I'll be buying Brembo again anytime soon. And then the other thing I just noticed, look at the boot on this control arms ball joint. It's torn after 20,000 miles because I replaced this as well. The brand here is Lemforder, which I also thought was supposed to be a high quality brand. And if you take a quick peek on the other side, that's got a new control arm because the boot on that side was torn as well, and now I have to order one for this side. Look at all that new stuff over there. Back to the task at hand, which is removing this air strut. So these two bolts right here that go through the steering knuckle, these are not going to come out without a fight. Now, I'll be able to get the nuts off probably, but the bolts themselves, they're going to be seized in here in the steering knuckle. On the other side, I had to get the oxyacetylene torch out and get the bolt head glowing. Not just red hot, that wasn't enough. I had to get it orange hot in order to be able to punch this out. And unfortunately, while I was heating up the lower bolt there, I accidentally melted a hole in the CV boot, so I ended up having to replace that as well, which was a total pain. This brake pad is not worn properly. It's a lot thicker on this side, which makes me wonder if maybe this caliper is seized. See, it's got two pistons, so maybe one of them is seized. And to get this brake caliper bracket off, Land Rover decided to use these 21mm 12-point bolt heads. Luckily, I do have one of these. I probably should have removed that axle nut before I removed the brakes, but we'll try it with the impact here. And of course, it's basically a specialty socket, a 36mm 12-point. Got it. You can see better how I held this in place with zip ties. Look at that. So I'm going to replace this too while I'm in here. And in order to get this off and get the new one on in one piece, you have to remove the hub and this shield here. So basically everything here has to come apart. They say you're not supposed to do this, but I'm a professional, so I do what I want. The big boy 3/4 inch impact should be able to get these nuts off. Just for the fun of it, let's see if we can spin these bolts around. Okay, well that one's gonna come out easy then. Well, this is gonna be easy then. You see, you guys aren't gonna believe me that I had such a hard time with the other side. Oh! Woo! Got it. There we go. Oh. Oh, that's tight. Hey. Fantastic. I might need to just temporarily put this tie rod end back in. Oh, there it is. To the front. Oh, we get it? Yep, got it. One very rusty knuckle. Ooh. Well, I got the hub out, but the wheel bearing totally came apart in the process. Good thing I ordered a new one. Here's what's left of the bearing. Okay, new wheel bearing. It came in a Timken box, but it's actually that. It's out. Oh yeah, there we go. Okay, nice new brake shield. This is one of the parts I had to get shipped in from England. And lastly, I need to finish removing this air strut. So up here under the hood, you can see I already removed one of the bolts, and I made a little paint mark there because this is how the camber is set for the front suspension alignment. And so when I reinstall the new one, I want to make sure that I match it as closely as possible. New air strut. The air hose you just push in like so. Well, I got the alignment set pretty close, but it won't come to the right anymore, so that is as close as I can get it. Okay, good and tight. I got some nice new hardware for this, which I am going to be liberally coating in anti-seize. I want to say this is supposed to be 184 foot-pounds, so pretty tight. There we go, that feels good. Ignore that pattern that I greased on there. I thought that was going to go on the other side. Nope. Brand new axle nut here. Little trick to keep this from moving when you tighten the nut there. Take a punch or something, stick it in between the vents of the brake rotor, and there you go. Now I should be able to tighten that up. So the torque spec on this is 311 foot-pounds, and I don't have a torque wrench that goes that high. So instead, I'm gonna use my body weight. Now I've marked a spot 18 inches away from the center of this on this pipe here, and I weigh a little over 200 pounds. And so if I put pretty much all my body weight at this point, considering that this is 90 degrees, that should be about right. All right, there it is. And now I need to stake this axle nut so it will not be able to come off. I don't know if you could hear all the air rushing out, but I have this set as low as possible so that I can torque these by hand later. And unfortunately, the battery is dead, so I have it charging, and it is taking 40 amps right now. Let's see if it'll start. There we go. It says air suspension not in customer mode, but I wonder... Okay, no, it looks like I'm gonna have to do something with the scan tool. I'm thinking suspension enable. Okay, start the engine, yep. Press the suspension raise switch once. Okay, up arrow. Okay, yeah, there we go, it's working. Okay, we're at full off-road height here, and I don't hear any leaking, which is good. And would you look at that, I drive it about 100 yards so I can give this thing a bath, and the check engine light came on. The code is P0175, System 2 Rich, Bank 2. I'm gonna reset this and hope it doesn't come back. Okay, endless issues. It is the same day. I just washed the car, and now I notice the AC is not blowing cold at all, but it was blowing cold earlier when I first started the car. So either we have an AC system leak or the compressor is dead. So I hooked up my AC pressure gauge manifold set to the engine, and both the high pressure and the low pressure gauges read about 90 something PSI, which indicates there's probably not a leak in the system, but rather the AC compressor itself is not doing its job. And there is a trouble code for the AC compressor, B11EE-11. I'll have to look that up to be sure, but it probably means the compressor's bad. So we can see that the AC compressor is spinning and the clutch is engaged, so that suggests that the compressor itself is probably bad. It is a few days later and the new AC compressor has been delivered. Now, if you go to Land Rover for one of these, they charge over $1,200, and so I opted to go for the cheap Chinese version, which was $200 something. So hopefully I don't regret it. But the compressor is pre-filled with the correct oil, and look, they even give you a couple new O-rings. Okay, so I've already removed some stuff here for better access, and somewhere in there, there's an AC compressor. In all seriousness, you can see it right in there, but there's this subframe in the way, there's the body, there's suspension compartments, and then the steering rack here is in the way. All of this combined, and you have terrible access to the lower side of the engine. And then from up top, it's even worse. I mean, you can see the power steering pump right there, but underneath it, the AC compressor, you can barely even see it, not to mention access it. Really, it's this frame rail down here, plus this body panel right here that give you terrible access. Okay, I got the old one out. Now, I didn't time myself, but I would say it probably took about 2 or 3 hours to get this out, and I think it'll take about the same amount of time to get the new one in. I should note, the factory repair manual says to remove the steering gear here, but I can confirm it's not necessary to do that, and removing it seems like it's really time consuming, because you have to take like all of this stuff apart in order to get it out. All right, there it is. New AC compressor is installed. The new one actually went in a little bit easier than the old one came out, so maybe this is like a 4 to 5 hour job in total. While I have this fender lining off, I have access to this light back here. There's been some condensation buildup in this light, so I want to replace it. Picked up a brand new light from Land Rover. I'm like trying to pull this out here and the lens came off. That's probably why water was leaking in. See if I can do this one-handed. Yes. Now for charging the system, first thing we're going to do is use this vacuum pump to suck all the air out of the system. And once we get down to about minus 30 inches of mercury or minus 1 bar, we're in pretty good shape. And now I can open up this can of R134A and start filling it with refrigerant. I think it just opened. You always fill from the low pressure side, so I'll open up the low pressure. You can see it's starting to fill the system. At some point, the pressure of the can and the system will equalize, so it'll stop filling, so I'll have to start the engine to keep going. So basically at this point, I need to get the pressure high enough in the system so that the AC will turn on. And you do that by tipping the can upside down, and then you can see in the port here, you can see there's some liquid starting to come through the port. Oop, like that right there. You don't want too much liquid to enter the system because if it goes through the compressor, that's really bad for it. And honestly, that's probably a little too much. I overdid it a little bit. But you can see the pressure of the high pressure side and the low pressure side are equal. Once the compressor turns on, we'll see the pressure here increase substantially, and we'll see the pressure on this side decrease. And during this process, you want to make sure you have it on max AC. Oh, there it is. I think the AC compressor is just turning on. Now that the pressure's lower on the low pressure side, that'll make this easier. Okay, 2 cans of this used up, and we're looking pretty good over here. Now, how much do I put in? It says right here 25 ounces, and I put in 2 12-ounce cans, and I know from personal experience that this will work just fine. And then here in the cab, it is blowing nice and cold. I'm just doing an oil change right now and checking the filter, and it looks pretty good in here. I don't see any bearing chips or anything like that. If you remember, quite a while ago I changed the bearings in this engine, and so it's nice to see that everything seems to have taken pretty well. I've been daily driving this for a while since those repairs, and so far things have been pretty good, and specifically that check engine light has not come back on. So when I replaced the air suspension and all those other components, you know, the wheel bearings, the brakes, all that stuff, the total parts cost was $1,988. So that was pretty substantial, and that, of course, does not include all the blood, sweat, and tears that I had to put into that repair. The AC repair was pretty cheap, only $302 in parts, and so far the AC is working great. At present, there's really only one issue that's bothering me, and that is the brake lines in some spots are quite rusty, and I'm afraid that if I step on the brakes too hard that they might break, so I'm gonna have to deal with that. I'll show you what I mean. Here on the back, this brake hose here has a segment of steel tube, and it is rusty AF. It's flaking, and it looks like this thing could break at any time. And then here in the front, it's really only rusty in one spot where the main brake line attaches to the brake hose, so I just have to replace one little segment. My brake hoses have arrived, and I was expecting some cheap Chinese parts, but look at this. It says made in UK and genuine OE, so that's awesome. I'm going to clamp this hose just to try to reduce leakage. So the nut is stuck on the brake line, and if I turn it too much, I'm just going to break the brake line, so I'm going to have to do this the hard way. There we go. Nice new brake line. That should be good and tight. There we go, beautiful new brake hose installed. Look at that. And for the front, I've decided I'm just going to replace the entire brake line. The routing comes up here and then goes behind the engine there. Not too bad. And then comes through right here to the ABS module, and you can see by this copper nickel one right here that I've already done the other side. Okay, I can't forget to put this clip back on. Well, I got the brake line run, and look at this. It is messy, but once I get this end attached, I'll know how much length I need, and I'll be able to clean all that up. But now let's get a flare on this end so we can attach it. First, don't forget your line fitting. I forget it way too often, and then you have to do the whole thing over again. Okay, we use the hole for 3/16, 4.75 millimeters. You want to get it so the end of the line is flush with this surface. And then on my flaring tool, I have the correct bubble flare adapter. And then once you've made contact here, you can back it off and remove it, and you're done. And there it is. This should fit right up. That feels tight enough. All right, well there it is. The brake line is run and it's not rubbing up against anything. I got it hooked up on this end, and I also bled the brakes. Now to test the brakes, the brake pedal feels fine, but I do want to test to make sure there's no air in the ABS module, and the way to do that is to try using the hill descent control. And to do that, I am on the top of a hill, and this road is mostly unmaintained and quite sandy. Just put it in drive, hill descent control on. I'm going to let off the brakes here. Yeah, I can feel it working. We're about to go over the real steep bit of the hill. As is usual for filming on a hill, the camera really doesn't show how steep it actually is. Yeah, it feels like it's working great. There's no air in the system. I wanted to talk about the wiper blades because this is another reason not to buy a Range Rover. These are not universal wiper blades that you can simply buy at an auto parts store or Walmart. You have to go to the Land Rover dealer or a British auto parts specialty store for these. And that's why I keep an extra pair of blades on hand in case I need some on short notice. The cost of these blades, $130 from the dealer or $90 online. And it's not like you're getting anything special for your money because these are not even beam wipers, just standard conventional wipers of average quality. The only reason Land Rover would do this is to get every last nickel and dime out of their customers. Well, there it is. It hit 190,000 miles. So there's proof that I put a little over 10,000 miles on the car in this video. I mentioned at the beginning of this video that there are only two types of people who really should be buying one of these, and the first is very specific: YouTubers. I believe this is my 7th video in this Range Rover series, and to date, the first 6 videos combined have gotten around 6.5 million views, so that definitely has made it worth it. By the way, if you're new to the channel and you haven't seen the first 6 videos, I have a link to the playlist down in the description below. And then the second type of person who should buy one of these is the wealthy collector who likes British cars. Think Jay Leno. He could definitely afford the repair bills on this. And other than that, you really have to be a little bit crazy to buy one of these. Earlier in 2024, I filmed this footage for a short to demonstrate yet another reason not to buy a Range Rover. To date, I've had to replace 4 different light housings on this Range Rover due to cheap manufacturing. I calculated the total cost of ownership while I filmed this video, and over the last year it cost me 83 cents a mile. Interestingly, AAA estimates that if you go out and buy a brand new medium-sized SUV, it'll cost you 83 cents a mile, exactly the same. So I could go buy a brand new car and expect to see about the same total cost of ownership as this. I can bet you though, the new car will probably be more reliable over the first 5 years, but it also probably won't be as nice as this. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and stay tuned for part 2 of the Cheap Kubota series.